to Deep Soul Divers Astrology. I'm your host, Carmen Turner-Schott, and tonight I have a special guest with me, my mentor, friend, and fellow astrologer, Bernie Ashman. He's an author of several astrology books, and I want to welcome Bernie. We had some technical difficulties on Zoom, but I think he's on the phone here. And can you hear us, Bernie?
Yeah. Yes, I can. Thank you.
How are you?
Great. It's hot here, but it's wonderful.
Yes. So I'm
doing fine.
You're out in North Carolina, right?
Yes, that's right, Durham.
Nice. Can you go ahead and tell us a little bit about how you got into astrology?
Yes, it was actually, I discovered it in 1973. I'd already been into trying to learn meditation, trying to just develop my intuition. And I was so interested in psychology and that kind of thing and healing work. And when I found astrology, I just felt like it was the right fit for everything I wanted to do. And I really never looked back.
That's amazing. I just appreciate you so much as a mentor. You really encourage me to write books and to, just try to get publishers and all these things. So I really appreciate you. And I know we've worked a lot together on a lot of different things. And I know we both share some 8th house energy, and, just wanted to talk astrology with you and get your take on the 8th house. And, we may get some callers, we may not, but if not, you and I could just have a chat about some of your books and just some of the research that we've seen, through the years. I'd love to hear your opinion about all of this astrology stuff.
Sure. I'd be glad to. I've got a pretty strong 8th house myself. I've got 3 planets, the Sun, the Jupiter, and Sagittarius. And I've got Mercury in Scorpio, and I've got the South Node in Scorpio in the 8th house. So in working with clients, it's probably really helped because understanding their 8th house, having that kind of energy myself, it's a deep place. I mean, when you start talking about the water houses, the 4th, the 8th, and the 12th, and especially the 8th and 12th, the book you've written recently is great on those 2 houses. The 8th house is just deep. And, the interesting thing is, though, a lot of people miss the boat on this. It's also a good business house for people wanting to develop their skills, with their careers. It's your passion, the 8th house, for what you want to do. And on the psychological end, which you've written about and what I've written about, it's the whole thing of rebirth, renewal. We all go through stuff. It's not like every day is just we feel up. We just deal with things. But the 8th house, when we use it right, it replenishes us, in my opinion, with a lot of good energy. And I think sometimes people don't really emphasize that enough, that there's just a lot of healing energy in it as well. Everybody at times will go through a loss as well as a victory of some type. And I think the 8th house, in the way it is in relationships, I've worked with I've written a lot about relationships, and I've worked with people about their relationships, whether it's couples or individuals. And the 8th house is like the trust between people, not just the sexual energy, the passion, but also the trust, the sharing of energy. So it's a deep place. Of the 12, it's probably the most psychological in a lot of ways, but it's not the only one, though, of the 12 houses. But it's certainly a deep place to explore yourself on a very deep level, on the soul level. So does that make sense?
Yes. And, for the listeners out there, the basics, the 8th house is ruled by the sign Scorpio, and it's associated with that Pluto energy, like of rebirth, regeneration. And one of the patterns I've seen, Bernie, in my own life, and what kind of got me into astrology was losing a friend at a young age, and I wonder,
Oh, yeah.
I see that as one of the main patterns that a lot of people that have a lot of planets, especially the sun or moon and in that eighth house, share with me that, they always kind of wondered about death and what happens when we die, and kind of a natural connection to death. Did you have that, Bernie, as a child and growing up with your sun and all those planets there in the eighth?
I would say it more like this for me. I was aware of it, and I didn't even know why. Even when I was like 8 years old, I had a dream about seeing my own grave.
Oh, wow.
It's just phenomenal.
That
it
is
just was,
deep.
and I woke up from that dream, I just shaking. It's just strange. But
Oh
I
my
lost
God.
my best friend in my 30s, so you will have some loss around you for sure.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
I can relate to that, and
Yeah.
I know I've worked with a lot of clients that have had to deal with that with their own experiences. It's always interesting to see how people um, define that whole thing about losing people. But the eighth house can prepare you for that, though, just like Pluto does, as a planet, or Scorpio as a sign. Um, I think the older I got, the more accepting I was of losing. Not that it was easy. I mean, you're still going to go through something, no matter how much you understand about metaphysics, however you practice it or whatever your interest is. But with the eighth house, even. But I've noticed people who seem to have a deep understanding of the eighth house, they get through loss. Maybe they get. I'm not saying it's easier, but they seem to come to grips with it. Does that make sense to you?
Oh
To
yeah.
me, it does.
Yeah, it it
Yeah.
really does. I think those first experiences, that we had, I mean, your dream. And I remember I used to lay in bed at night when I was maybe, 10 or 11 and think, what if I die? Where will I go? And I thought, why am I thinking these things, right? And then
Yeah.
when I became
Right.
16, lost my friend, that's when I first started learning about my chart, and that I had the moon and Jupiter and Chiron and part of fortune in the eighth house. And I realized, oh, this is why. And as I got older, you're right. I'm very comfortable with grief and loss, and I'm kind of the one that people come to about these kind of things. I don't know if you felt
Right.
that people would share, that they've lost loved ones. People would come up to me in the grocery store and just tell me that they lost
Sure.
someone. And did you have that happen too? I'm curious. A lot of eighth house people, you're a
Yeah.
phoenix. I call eighth
Yeah.
house phoenixes, right?
You're right. At a very young age, in my teens especially, and 20s, 30s, I mean, all these decades that I've been here, um, I think I even attract clientele that are dealing, sometimes it's with a crisis or they want to get over it. They want to move on. And I think that's one thing positive about the eighth and probably even the 12th house is that I think in a way it gives us that energy to move on, to have near life experiences. And I think that's really true of the eighth house. Sometimes when I've done public lectures, I've compared even the eighth house to the breathing process. When I got into yoga, I learned how to breathe right. And with the eighth house, it's like, in some ways, it's like taking in a breath and holding it for 3 months. I mean, when you
Yeah.
have a deep experience, you know what I mean? It takes so long to process some things.
Yes.
And I think as you start to get into the rhythm of the eighth house, you start to process them a little bit quicker. Not that it's going to happen overnight, but you just come to understanding. The eighth house is just tremendous for processing experiences. I've seen that in people like with Scorpio rising or planets in Scorpio or have a strong Pluto in their chart.
True.
And plus the eighth house is definitely like that. So in a
Yeah,
way, it prepares us to deal with these things.
It does. It really does prepare you, and it kind of makes you, I feel like it's a very resilient house. You become really resilient. And I find that you're really good in a crisis. I don't know about you, but I kind of, something kind of kicks in, I think, for eighth house people, and they kind of take charge, and they're the ones that are able to deal with crisis when everyone else might be in shock, kind of thing. I see that. Yeah. It's like a strength. I really think it gives people a strength, is what I kind of talk about in my book, Phoenixes and Angels, which is master in the 8th and 12th houses. And Bernie, you've been a member of my 8th house astrology group for many years, and that's how we met. I think I was living in Germany at the time, and you wrote me about my book, The Mysteries of the 8th House Phoenix Rising, which I self-published that book, and you read my book, and I was so honored because you're a legend in the astrology world, in my opinion, and I just am so happy that we have our friendship and we work together too. And definitely we'll have to do a show about our exciting news for next year that we have coming. Bernie and I wrote a book together. I don't want to say much yet because we're going to do a whole show about it, Bernie. But we actually wrote a book together. It's going to come out next July, so we're really excited about that. But
totally.
So
and you've inspired me also at the same time. That's what's great, though, I think, about collaborating. I'm sure people listening to this will feel the same way. If they've ever collaborated on a project, you can get, if you're with the right collaborator, you can get a lot of stimulation in a good kind of way. So, I've enjoyed our friendship in a big, big way. It's been very motivating.
This is
for sure.
It's been great, and I think, I don't know about you, but when I first started studying astrology, I really felt there wasn't a lot of books out there about the 8th house specifically, that really.
No, there weren't. You're right.
I just felt like, why is no one writing about this house, right? Like, is it just so taboo?
Exactly.
Secret, it rules secrets and all the things in society, that a lot of people feel uncomfortable talking about, right? And like death,
the taboos, right?
And the secrets, death, sex, taboos, and it's also, I think, other people's resources and inheritance, and I don't know about you, I'd like your experience with this, but I find that, I've been, that you benefit through the family in some way. I feel like I inherited some things from my mother's side, with my moon there. And I think my grandmother was a lot like me. She would dream things, and I never really knew that till I got older, that she was very similar to me. And she never really told a lot of people. And she was a 12th and 8th houser. Once I did her chart, she was born 1935, and but she passed away in 2015. But her and I were very close, and I feel like I inherited some, not financial things, so to speak, but more, I think, spiritual gifts, from her, maybe. My mother.
No, I can totally relate. My mother was a professional pianist, and growing up, there was always music in the house with her playing, and I used to watch her even do a Broadway type show when it came through town. And I think I got a lot of creative drive or the understanding of it in just watching her. It wasn't music for me. I love music, but I didn't want to get into playing it so much. But when I got into writing and astrology, interpreting the symbols, I think back often to those years of her music. So it is interesting. From my mother, I did learn an awful lot about creativity. So, when you talk about that 8th house, it is interesting because when people tap into it, it's almost like they do come alive in a different sort of way. That creative drive that you normally associate maybe with the 5th house, it's really strong in the 8th house in a big way. In a way, even it can give you a sense of a rebirth when you're manifesting 8th house energy. You know,
True.
in the counseling world, the bonding process with people, as a therapist of any kind, you get a lot of that energy you pull from your own eighth house, and people seem to trust it if they really connect with you. So, and you could even use that. You could say in the business world, if you have clients that come to see you in any type of profession, if they trust you, you might be pulling off of some of the eighth house for sure.
That's
So
true.
it's just an interesting landscape.
Yeah, I like how you talk about the business thing, and because they always say, Scorpios can make good business type minds, and that Scorpio energy. It is interesting. I do meet a lot of eighth house people that have planets there, a lot of Scorpio that are in business or finance, or they take care of other people's money, right, in some way.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
that's very interesting too. And I'm curious too, Bernie, with the energy, I feel like when planets are in the eighth house, and just, research and hearing people's stories, I talk a little bit about it in Phoenixes and Angels, but it seems like they're very sensitive to energy, and they really can see what's going on behind the scenes that maybe some people are missing. They are very perceptive and can see the truth, so to speak.
Yeah.
And did you feel that way as the sun in the eighth? Like, do you feel that affected you in your life?
Yeah. I was kind of a quiet kid, and I don't know if people really knew I was really observing them.
Yeah.
But I was always found it interesting. I was
Sure.
kind of maybe tuning into them. And I was very sensitive to other people's energy through other places in my chart also, like Neptune, but through the eighth house for sure. Always wondering what people were thinking, what was really on their mind. So, yeah, I can relate to what you're saying. It started for me really early. I didn't even understand what was, I can't say that I really understood all those processes going on inside of me until, and actually, I got into astrology when I was 25, and it started to help me look back and just size things up, experiences that I had already been through. So I think that's true for a lot of people when they get into this kind of thing. In the metaphysical world, it just seems to be a real eye-opener. The intuition really comes alive.
Yes.
So I always say the best astrologers that I've known they're just very intuitive. There's a mental process with astrology, but there's also the art. It's an art and science, and the art it comes through that intuition, I feel. So I've always been very intuitive, and I've known people that are in astrology. I've known a few that are pretty intuitive. So I've always found them able to connect those symbols to people in a really unique way. So it's always been an interesting thing for me for myself, and to know some other people doing that. Yeah. So it's a fun, astrology is a fun subject when you start to really understand it. I mean, at first it's mind-boggling. There's a lot of information. There really is. I'm helping somebody now. I picked up a new student recently, and there's just so much there when you're trying to go even take them a little further beyond the birth chart. So, but once you do, it's quite a ride. I mean, once you start to see whole charts, it's fascinating how it's such an ecosystem. Those 12 houses and the planets, the signs. There's something interrelated throughout a chart. So, but the eighth house, it's a big deal in a lot of ways, because it really helps you connect to the meaning of life in a lot of ways. So, I can't say it enough. It's powerful. It's a powerful place.
Yeah, I feel like it makes you very deep, and sometimes it's hard to even express what you're feeling, because it's kind of like you do go through these transformations mentally, emotionally. And I don't know about you, but I remember, back in college, and just many times it's like I would wake up and I would just feel different. and I would want to
Yeah.
get rid of all my material things. I know it sounds strange, but I would just like, I was giving my
I
clothes
understand.
away. At one point, I'm like, I told
Yep.
some girls in the dorm, take my clothes. I got rid of everything, like just take it. I wanted to start fresh, like that energy of the eighth house is
Yeah.
like a death, like
Yeah.
something's old that needs to be thrown out. And then there's like new energy, new,
Yes.
it's very deep, and sometimes you just have to live
Yeah.
it, and when people are going through these highs and lows like you talk about, I think a lot of eighth house people, to me it's a little bit of a heavier area than the 12th house. I feel like the 12th
Yeah.
house
It is.
is more mystical, more like a lighter
Right.
type of energy to me.
Yes.
So having both,
Totally.
having
Yeah.
both, and even in my groups, I don't know if you noticed, like the 12th house group's a lot more active and people are sharing more, and then in the 8th house it's like, I'm
Yeah.
like, are you guys there? Like no one post. And then if I post, yes, they'll all start writing, but they don't post first, right? It's like they're observing, waiting, right, and behind the scenes for someone else to start a
I know.
conversation.
I put a post in there one day, and I was surprised. Everybody said, "Wow, somebody's actually talking about themselves."
I know, right? I mean, it's
Yeah.
it's so quiet, and then I wonder. It's like
Yeah.
we have like 13,000 people in there, but like no one's saying anything.
Yeah. I know.
It's
Yeah.
kind
I
of
don't want
fun.
to reveal too much. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like
Yeah.
they want other people to
It's
share. Yeah,
interesting.
that Scorpio, you tell them all the secrets, but they don't tell you much, right? That's kind of the energy.
No, no, they're not. They're holding their cards.
Yes,
Yeah, it
yeah,
happens. That
it's
was
very
funny what
interesting.
you said about giving up everything, because I went through that in the 1970s quite a bit. Um, I followed a guru at that time, and I just didn't really feel a real strong attachment necessarily to material things for a period of time. But then I started to see if you're in this world, there's nothing wrong necessarily
That's right.
with owning things. So
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
it's interesting.
Did you
Yeah,
feel, I find that a lot of eighth and 12th house people have shared this kind of similar thing with me. And I remember, feeling, not want to say it's guilt, but just, feeling like, not that it was wrong, but like, I shouldn't need material things. I should, and someone said to me, you did not choose to be an ascetic, or, to live in, away from the world. You're in the world, you know what I mean? And somebody said
right.
something to me, and it kind of, well, you're right. I'm not living that life. But, I think,
Yeah,
when you have planets in the 8th and 12th houses, you kind of feel like maybe a memory, like I'm curious with your south node there,
right.
how that's affected your life, because you're moving into the north node in the second house. How do you
Right.
think that south node in Scorpio has affected you this lifetime?
It took some time with that south node. The and actually even to balance them. It's a balancing act anyway with the
Yes.
nodes of the moon. Um, but that second house it really helped me get stabilized, because I noticed when I was working at something, it focused me, and it actually made the eighth Scorpio, the south node in the eighth, stronger. Um, it kind of clarified why I was here in the first place. That that whole thing of having that south node and Scorpio in the eighth house, I was kind of confused for a while, how to balance the whole thing of emotional intensity. And then with the North Node in Taurus, just accepting the fact that it's okay to have some peace in your life. Everything, the trick with a South Node in Scorpio is not to make everything a crisis. It doesn't have to be a crisis, like in your relationships, in your
Yeah.
business, or in your mind. And the North Node in Taurus just kind of was a good energy. It's one of the more stabilizing energies in my chart. So I just learned to accept it, that
Yeah.
it was good to have some peace in my life. And a stable existence was not a bad thing. It didn't always have to be an upheaval. which sometimes I'm not saying everybody with a South Node in Scorpio is like that, but there are those tendencies sometimes in that South Node in Scorpio to want to scrap everything and just start all over again, like nothing, you didn't have a past.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just that balancing act of Taurus, Scorpio through those nodes, and the second and eighth house where they are. But it took a little time. It wasn't. I think we've talked before about Saturn returns when they happen at age 29.
Yes.
And that's when it all started to really make sense to me. How to deal with how to get more out of those nodes of the moon. Actually, at that time, I think a lot of people, when they go through that first Saturn return, and sometimes it's an eye opener in different ways depending on the person.
Definitely.
Yeah.
It's interesting, because Bernie, our nodes are flipped. I have the South Node Taurus, North Node Scorpio, and I have so many people that are in my life that are your nodes, because it's kind of like, what you've learned and mastered, I'm learning and mastering this lifetime, and then what I've mastered and learned, you're learning to balance, so it's interesting. And my daughter has your node. She has the South Node Scorpio, North Node Taurus. And
That's right.
I find that I don't know if you see this, I see that a lot of parents share the flip nodes with one of their children. And it's kind of like a mirror, right? Like they're learning from you, you're learning from them. Your soul has kind of mastered the opposite thing, right? And I see that in parents' children's charts a lot. I'm like, oh wow, you guys are flip nodes, right?
Yeah.
And
right.
It's interesting.
Yeah, it is. It's family charts that I've done. I'm probably like you too, what you're saying. Like one person will have maybe the sun in Leo, and then maybe the son or daughter will have the Leo rising, and maybe the father will have the moon in Leo. You often see a crossover. It was heavy in my family was having the moon opposed Neptune, and my mother didn't have that, but she had the moon in Pisces.
Oh, okay.
But my father, my brother, and me had the moon opposed Neptune. So you will see that a lot of times, repeating patterns in families. But I always find it fascinating to see that. Like you say, in a way, we are learning from each other. Hopefully, the right things. But it's true that what you're saying. I've experienced that also, for sure. Yeah.
So what I know, you've wrote several books, and I guess, number one, what inspired you to write your very first book? Can you tell us a little bit about that experience and how that topic came to be?
Sure. It was in the 1980s, and I actually called a publisher out in San Diego. They put me on the phone with the editor in chief, who was the daughter of Zipporah Zip Dobbins, who's rather well known for inventing the zip code in astrology. I had no idea was talking to her daughter. I did not know who Marisa Pottinger was that I was talking to. But I told her about the book, the relationship of the planet, sign, and house. I was going to do tables in a book and have the psychological patterns related to the planet, sign, and house. Like, for instance, Aries, and then ruler of Aries is Mars, and the first house has that connection. Zip Dobbins called them the alphabet. I called them chords, like a musical chord, probably from my mother.
Oh, that's neat.
That there's 3 tones in a chord. So that's how that book actually started. I'll tell you the truth. Marisa Pottinger said, send me 3 chapters and I'll know if we can give you a contract or not. And I said, sure. Of course.
Wow. Yeah, of course.
So I wrote the 3 chapters, sent them in, and they gave me a book contract in 5 days. I was totally shocked. In those days, it wasn't email. They sent me a letter right away.
Oh my gosh.
I had sent it out. Yeah, I had sent it out to about 15 places, but they were the first ones to respond and the only ones that were going to offer me a contract. And I said, I'll take it. But it's so hard to get a book contract,
Yes.
especially your first one. So that's how it all actually started. I just got this thing that I wanted to write an astrology book. I just felt it was time to do it. So I just felt really motivated at that point in time. And I got lucky to find a publisher. They published my first two books. My first two books are more like textbooks. The second book was Roadmap to Your Future, Complete Guide to Progressions in Transit. The same publisher, ACS in San Diego, published my first two books.
Okay.
So, and I was lucky that Marisa Pottinger edited them, the daughter of Zip Dobbins. So she did a great job editing, and it made the writing process go better for me. So I went to Llewellyn for for 5 more books, for the next 5 books. I moved over to Llewellyn. I met them at a conference in Atlanta, the owners.
Yes.
And we hit it off real good. And I told them I would like to write for them, and it worked out. So it's an interesting life.
A past life, you have a book about past lives, right? With them?
Yeah. There's 2 of them, but the first one I got published in 2010 was Sun Signs and Past Lives, Your Soul's Evolutionary Path. That one came out in 2010. A little bit later with Sun Sign Karma. I went over all the psychological patterns you might run into. I kept this book simple so people would get a taste of past life patterns through their sun sign.
Okay.
Which became very popular. People really liked these books. So, I took, with Sun Signs and Past Lives, that was the first one, followed up by Sun Sign Karma, both through Llewellyn. You're right. And I invented a past life chart, actually, in the early 2000s that became a software program.
Oh, that's amazing.
That's still out there.
Wow.
That was quite an experience in itself.
How did that come to be? What's the name of that?
It's called the Past Life Chart, and Matrix Software did the developing of the software. And now Cosmic Patterns in Gainesville, Florida is carrying it. They sell it. Nice. And when you buy the program, it comes with that past life chart. Instead of the first house being the rising sign in the past life chart, it's the 12th house becomes the ascendant.
Okay.
And it's a little different house system without getting too technical here. But that was really interesting. I kind of surprised myself. It was like one of those 12th house out-of-body experiences. I just saw it within the chart.
Wow.
It just happened. I had a transit of Uranus going on. It bumped into my 12th house, and that's when I saw it.
Oh, that's really neat.
Happened.
That is really neat.
Yeah.
But
it's amazing, isn't it?
It's interesting you brought up, feeling the detachment from your body or whatever, and just kind of knowing something. With the 12th house. The 12th house is amazing. I think, I love it. I mean, I never understood until I started learning astrology why I was the way I was. And I got to say, learning about the 12th house and the 8th, but specifically the 12th house, I definitely connected to all of that. I remember when I used to walk, this is really strange, a story. I never really felt like my feet were on the ground. And it's a hard thing. I felt like I was floating. I know it sounds strange when I would walk around like I wasn't really here. Like I wasn't really here.
Sounds like the 12th house.
Yeah. And I just,
that is wild.
It was just me. I mean, I didn't know any different. And at times too, I would feel like I was in a movie, like a dream, like I would be looking in on like if I'm in a large group, I remember feeling like I was not looking in, like not really. It's a very strange feeling, like you just said, like you're not in your body, but you are, and you're like, I'm here, I know I'm here on Earth, right? But you just feel very mystical, and I don't know if even detached is the word, but I started realizing it was really a oneness. Like,
Yeah,
instead of feeling
yeah,
separate, I realized, no, I'm feeling connected to everything. That's what it was. But at times it would feel like you're separate, like you're different.
yeah,
But
yeah,
really it was
yeah,
like a collective unconscious thing, like Carl Jung talks about, like you're
yeah,
connected to everyone and
yeah.
everything.
Yes, that's what's fascinating about the 12th house. Yeah, when I started reading some of Carl Jung's stuff on archetypes, it actually really influenced me when I wrote my first book about archetypes. I took the psychological patterns, past
Neat.
life patterns, as archetypes, really.
Oh,
And
neat.
I have some of his books, and I just love his stuff. It really helped me, in a way, understand astrology better, getting into that early. So it's funny, one of my first psychology teachers was one of the leaders in the humanistic movement, Sidney Girard. Um, he died in an accident early, but when I was at Florida in the early 70s, I had a couple classes with him, and he wrote a book called The Transparent Self. And it was really interesting. I feel like it had something to do with recognizing astrology 2 years later when I was in a bookstore in Atlanta. I connected with a book by Dane Rudhyar, The Astrology of Personality. I sat there for about 3 hours with that book and bought it. I
Wow.
couldn't even get up out of a chair. I was just mesmerized by it.
Wow.
And, it's interesting how these things happen to people, whether it's me or,
Yeah,
I listen to somebody else's story, how they got into what they got into. It's always kind of
exactly.
magical in some way
It is. Yeah.
how that happens. Yeah. So, yeah.
So we got about 10 minutes here. So I
Mm-hmm.
like to, let's talk a little bit about the 12th house, and then
Sure.
before we end, I definitely want you to let people know about maybe your most recent book, where they can find your books, and your website and all your contact information too. But so
Sure.
what's your favorite thing about the 12th house? Like what's your opinion about the 12th house?
I, I, I find that it's where we romanticize life.
Yeah.
It's the idealism of it.
Yes.
Sometimes you just want to throw your hands up and say, God, I just can't do this anymore. It's awful. And then you realize the next day you wake up and you feel like, well, I'm going to try it all over again. It's that idealism we have that we
Yeah.
want to find something, greater than ourselves in some ways. So
Yeah.
it, it's such I call it the mothership of intuition, the 12th house. It's just a
Yeah.
place where like a river running through it. And, sometimes, we can get emotionally confused related to the 12th house, but we can also get very clear. It brings out our faith in ourselves and our belief in ourselves and our belief in other people. You can really inspire people as well as yourself
Yeah.
um, through the 12. It's a very interesting place. Wanting to be in romantic landscapes, like you were saying, just going for a walk and feeling like you're just walking on air. It's
Yeah.
sort of how you find it, I found it, and you probably have too, when I'm doing charts for healers, it's always somehow connected back to the 12th
Yeah.
in one way or another. And, for musicians, artists, people that, do art,
Yes.
musicians, you can even find it in the medical profession. That type of traditional medical people, sometimes you'll find that still, related back. So it's another fascinating area to just come to an understanding of, for sure. Uh, it's a beautiful place for intuition, that's for sure. I mean, there's no doubt about that.
Yeah, it's magical. I feel like, I call 12th house people angels, and that are fallen angels, and that kind of came because of so many people telling me they always felt very different from a young age, like they weren't from Earth. That's what they would tell me. Like, I feel like I'm alien. I'm adopted. I'm not my family. A lot of them tell me they ask their parents if they were adopted. They're like, no, you're mine, right? And but they always just felt really unique and different from people, and born very spiritual. I find that the 12th house people are born with the connection to their soul, and like you said, the intuition, and having boundaries, learning those boundaries, because of that Pisces energy and Neptune. You're right. The romanticism. I think that's probably the number one thing about the 12th house that causes the most heartache is that romanticizing and idealizing people when you're in love. That hurts real bad when you get your heart broke, right? And
but you're right about boundaries. You really do have to understand them for sure.
Yes.
But then again, you'll find sometimes people have to let people in if they've been blocking that, letting people see them on a deeper level. And the 12th house can open that up, allow people to do that. So, real interesting hearing you describe it, though. I share very much what you're saying, for sure.
I kind of noticed, 5 key patterns with the 12th house, and is psychic dreams. A lot of people with the sun or moon or 3 or more planets, or Pisces rising, a lot of Pisces energy, they often dream things that happen from a young age, and very vivid dreams, lucid dreams, waking up in their dreams. And I've done that. It's so hard to explain.
I have too.
Yeah, it's amazing. I wish I could control it, but it just happens, right?
No. Exactly.
But I love that about the 12th house is the dreams, sleep and dreams. I love to sleep, I love to dream, and I find that that's some of the blessings, the empathic abilities, the intuition, the creativity. I think you're right. There's a lot of that mysticism, and you can really tap into your creative side in writing too, being a writer and an artist and a musician, helping people in some way, being of service. They call, I remember it used to be scary when in the old days when I was researching the 12th house, because there wasn't a lot of books about it either. And it was like you'll lose everything, and you're gonna be alone and suffer. It was just a lot of negative, and I've realized no, there's so much more positive things about the 12th house and 8th house. Both of them have their challenges, but like you said, there's a lot of good things in there as well. Oh, Bernie, we got a call. We got someone calling in to ask us something. Madison from New Jersey. Madison, are you on? Hi, Madison.
Yes.
You got a question for us?
Yes, ma'am. First of all, thank you for talking to me. So I have a Pluto conjunct Venus conjunct Mars in the 12th. And Pluto's also trine my moon in the 4th house. And I feel like I always attract chaotic relationships, like relationships that are just come here, or like just come here to like teach me something, but it's just like on such a draining level. And it's just like, I don't know how to navigate that, or like, I would like to attract something, like better, happier, not something that's just like the people that don't really want to be with me, but like want to be with me to like take what I have, for sure.
Yeah, like dramatic. What do you think, Bernie, about that?
Yeah. Sometimes what will happen, you will get a pattern of the same types of people. There does come a point where the more you see it and you recognize it, you start to see it quicker. At least that's been my experience with people I've worked with. And even in my own life, to be honest with you, went through a little of that. And those boundaries get really better, get better established, because you're certainly capable of that with Pluto in the 12th. There's you could say an empowerment by knowing those boundaries. You are attracting certain types of people probably just not ready to make a commitment, the kind you want, or a definition of a relationship. So probably what I would think might happen is my guess on this. You would start to just see those patterns maybe quicker and start attracting maybe more of what you're looking for. And I would say you probably will get there, especially with that alignment you're talking about. I think you said Pluto trine the moon even. So that shows a real awareness of what you need. And that's really where it starts. I hope I made sense.
Yeah. It's definitely, I've noticed the lack of boundaries that I've had that keeps coming back to me because I keep accepting the people over and over again. Like, I'm like, oh, I can't do this anymore. And then they come back and like love bombing,
Is your Venus in the 12th? Did you say it's in the 12th?
Yes.
Yeah, I have Venus.
Pluto conjunct Venus conjunct Mars.
Yeah, that Venus in the 12th. I've got some videos on YouTube about that placement, specifically just looking at it standalone in the 12th and that learning to love ourselves and knowing the pattern, like Bernie was saying. When I realized that I was attracting, in my younger days, people that were emotionally unavailable or that I would even feel that was, taking my kindness for granted, right? Or a lot of heartache through relationships was kind of the pattern that I experienced with Venus there. But once I kind of saw it coming, like I realized, okay, this is a pattern and I'm meant to learn from this. And once I did, I was able to see it coming. And then I had to develop stronger boundaries and also to see people in a realistic way. That was the biggest challenge for Venus in the 12th house that I find is we tend to see people as we want them to be, not as they really are. Sometimes we see the good, right? But I think we only got like 60 seconds left, but thank you, Madison, for calling in.
Thank you.
And if you check out YouTube, I have some videos, I think 2 or 3 on Venus in the 12th house on my YouTube channel, Carmen Turner-Schott, and you might like them. And thank you for calling in.
Yes, thank you so much, guys, for answering my questions. I appreciate it so much.
Thank you. Hang in there.
Great.
So Bernie, tell us how people can find you and find your books here in the last minute or so here. Yeah.
If they go to my website, bernieashman.com, there's links on there to my book for sure. Amazon, always seems to have all of my books. From what I've seen. So that's one way. Or just go to my website. There's a link on there to each one of them.
Nice. BernieAshman.com. And, this was great to have you on, Bernie. I think we got, about 30 seconds. I think we'll be ending soon. But I'm sorry about the Zoom, but I'm glad you were able to call in. This was perfect. And I just want to thank you for being an amazing mentor to me and support with astrology and writing and all the things that we're doing together. I'm excited about working with you in the future too.
Oh, that's terrific. Yeah, I'm enjoying it, working with you totally, for sure. And thank you for inviting me tonight. I enjoyed it.
Thank you. And for everybody out there, my new book, Phoenixes and Angels, Mastering the 8th and 12th Houses is out. It just released in July. It's on Amazon. You can find it at carmenturnerschott.com as well. Follow Bernie Ashman as well on social media and you can follow my pages and join the 8th house and 12th house astrology groups on Facebook. We'd love to have you. And Bernie's in those groups as well. And we look at charts, help people. It's free. It's, you post your chart, post questions and try to get people talking and supporting each other in the Facebook astrology groups. So thanks for joining, Bernie. I think we'll be wrapping up here in a little bit. I was going to ask you. I think we're done. So thanks for coming, Bernie, and I will share this link and on you can share it on your page on Facebook. Thanks for coming.
Okay, thank you, Carmen.
Thank
Really
you.
appreciate it. Take care.
You
Bye-bye.
too.